Kia ora e te whānau, welcome to Tātai Manawa here in Tahuna, Queenstown, and it's time for Cuppa Kōrero. Tonight we've got with us Peter MacDonald, who is the Labour candidate for our region on the general roll, and so welcome Peter.
Thank you.
And of course Shyla and me, Alexa. And here we are, and Corey's behind the cameras there doing what he does. So, we'll kick right on in here, Peter, and first of all, can you just tell us a bit about yourself? And I know you've been around the region for a long time, and tell us why you're here. Why are you standing for Labour?
Well, that's a really good question, and you've asked it so nicely. I do get a semi-aggressive asking of that to me sometimes, like, what are you doing? What are you doing standing for Labour? So that's a nice way to ask it, to kick us off. So basically, at the end of the day, I'm a farm boy from Dipton. I went to high school and just come back to the...
We've had farm boys from Dipton before in our politics around here.
Yeah, from a farm, that's right, yes, that's right. So the farm was a family farm, and it still is a family farm. And there was always me and my brother had to be on the farm with my father. In his later years, he didn't keep great physical health, so my brother was away, and that was the family arrangement. So in 1984, I came back from school and I started farming there, but grew up all my life there on the farm, born in Lumsden, like my children were born in Lumsden. So I have been a bit of a home boy, you could say.
Hey.
And yes,
then what? Politics?
Well, there's a bit of a gap between that, but I just had this environmental thing inside me, and I guess it's for those kitchen tables conversations over all those years, you soak things in. And my father, we struggled a bit with each other. We're both sort of strong-headed, sort of MacDonalds are a bit like that, but he was a hunter and an environmentalist. He had quite a large involvement with Save the Manapori campaign back in the early days then. So, and then he was the president of Federated Farmers, which seems a bit strange to me, but it all fitted together anyway. So that's how my environmental thing started, and then I went on to join developed a land care group and chaired that, and catchment groups. I was involved in the setting up of catchment groups in Southland with the Catchment Forum, and that's been superseded by Thriving Southland now, which runs about 36 to 38 catchment groups throughout the region.
Is that like an integrated catchment management arrangement?
It's catchment groups down the catchment, so people were quite... So what the groups are basically are community leadership.
Okay.
We identified really early on that you couldn't have a leadership like a Federated Farmers because that was subscription based or a levy based one like Beef and Lamb or Dairy NZ, but a catchment collective, a group, could represent everybody in the village and in the rural areas too.
Okay, so my role here is I don't know much about politics. I'm in the learning, so I'm going to ask you questions, yes, like everyday people kind of questions.
Yep.
So how would you explain catchment to an everyday New Zealander? When you say you're part of a catchment group, what is that exactly?
That's just like a group of people that...
So what is a catchment though, is the first part of the question, eh?
And what's a group for?
It's a defined area that the water sheds off into a defined area. And most of the groups are based around freshwater health and environment.
So it's about where the water falls off the hills and down into the land and makes its way to the sea. That becomes a catchment. So if you think of the water, it's the water catchment.
Okay, it's correct.
And every group sends it on to the next group. It's like, give me a tag, it's yours now. That is the concept around it. So we get together and we design projects and things like, what are we going to do? And it's the typical wee group of people. No one wants to do the social media side of it. It's all too difficult.
So how would you solve the issue if, for example, if you've got all these different people involved in the catchment, and say, for example, this part here, the water starts coming through and it's not good. Like, how do you guys deal with that kind of situation?
So the catchment groups by themselves are community groups. So I look at both parts. There's overland contamination flow, and I know,
Yep.
and they're the things of the muddy water that goes into the creeks. Catchment groups can deal with that, but when it comes to really difficult stuff like nitrate build-up in the aquifers, it's really a regulatory fix that has to happen there, because that's when you start to touch the very successful farming systems, and that becomes quite problematic. We've got in quite deep pretty quickly, I know.
Yeah,
But-
they have taken us in quite
Yes,
really
but it's a,
Yeah,
it is
I
a real
just need
good
to
question.
understand. I'm just trying. I'm trying to understand here.
That's very hard within the catchment group, because basically that's a neighbour telling a neighbour, you must do this. And of course, the groups don't last very long when you have that arrangement within a group, because you still have to socialise with people. You go down to the hall or down to the golf club and do that. So you've got to keep that unity there. So
Yeah. So all of this would have tipped you into politics, wouldn't it?
that is right. Tipped me into, I spent 6 years on the Conservation Board, and that was a lot of learnings there. Absolutely love that. And then into the Regional Council, because I had this need to feel as though I've got to do something about our issues that we've got, not just pull the carpet up and...
So you're thinking about the regulation that would answer Shaila's question about how you get people to work together when actually the problems are bigger than the communities that are there.
Yep, that's right. And very disappointing for me is that this term, last term that we had with Regional Council, we were sitting there with the plan change tuatahi that was sitting there ready to go to make a meaningful reduction in nitrates in the Southland catchments over a generation. It was all planned to do that. There was going to be some consequences, but when you take farming that's taken 10 steps forward in a profit sense, and to take one step back to let our next generations take another 10 steps forward, I was all for that. And we had a government that come through and just started turning off the switches of the regional functions and the regional council.
So did you stand down in 2025?
No, I missed out on the election. It was a one council award, and I came second. But that's losing.
But that's because of your support of that plan, quite likely. Do you think?
I was well known as being outspoken for many years, because I also, another hobby that I had was writing. So I wrote for Fairfax. I was supplied a column for 10 years. Yeah, so every month for 10 years. Never missed a deadline. I was very proud of that.
So I stood down in 2025. I didn't run, but basically I didn't run because I was so angry that the Otago Regional Council plan was ditched by the national government that came in at the end of 2023 and didn't allow us to notify the plan. And this was a land and water plan that was set up to try and improve the water quality in the land, and it was an integrated system. And that was at the same, were you doing the same?
Well, we were a bit more advanced in Otago. It's not a competition. And so,
A bit more advanced down in Southland, yeah. Well, that's always, like, I can understand. No, I won't even argue that one.
fully operational water and land plan.
That's right, I knew
But
that.
this was a plan change to that. So the water and land plan covered a whole myriad of activities, but the insertion of the plan change was to deal with specifically nitrates in the water. So that was the hard stuff, because if people don't know, what actually happens is that intensity of livestock systems creates nitrates. It's not just livestock, but it primarily is in Southland. And of course that goes down to production, and then it goes down to profitability, and then goes down to land values. And that's the people's fear, is that if you take away our intensity to drop the nitrates, it's going to filter all the way back to my land value. So that's why it becomes very, very serious. It's like going up to a Otago and talking to an irrigator you know how serious those discussions would be.
Yes, they were very serious, not always the funnest discussion.
But doesn't it make sense to lessen the nitrate? Yeah, you did mention that it's going to bring the land value down, but generationally, like for the betterment of our papatoa, well, our land, isn't it better? Like in the long run?
I think it is, because I don't think that it would reduce land values, because
Wouldn't it be more healthier?
that was a feeling. You could say, let's go back to 2014, and that's exactly what people sort of felt. But
Okay.
things are different with, people, the due diligence they're doing on these large dairy properties of $10 million plus, and probably double that. They're doing due diligence around flood hazards, all these sorts of things, getting the LiDAR work and, hydrology around that to understand their risks. And if you're in a risky catchment with high nitrates, that's a regulatory risk for your business, so you should understand that. So farm planning goes a long way. I'm just getting down into the detail. I'm sorry, probably about that sort of stuff.
No, that's all right.
But that's awesome to know that. I think just before we carry on,
Yeah.
I want to acknowledge that your children whakapapa nai tahu, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so you would have quite a big interest in
Yeah.
Te Tiriti and their future. And
Yeah, I know it's a wee bit of a discussion around the kitchen table.
Yeah, wow.
And that's something that's been, it's something that's we've talked about at home, and I've been quite upset because I'm a very proud dad, and I see that when those awful discussions were happening, I felt that too. So
what was it like around the kitchen table? How does those really racist discussions that we've been having in the last year or so, how does that impact your rangatahi, your children?
Well, it was discussions with friends, 1 o'clock at night, and you're having a few drinks, something comes out, and me and Kim, we just don't put up with that sort of stuff anymore. We probably used to, but don't do that anymore. But I feel quite strongly about it, that I think the treaty is I would call it a constitutional document that sits in the foundation of our country, really, basically. And I've been pretty upset the way it's sort of been treated like the rest of the country.
Yeah.
I've been pretty upset. And I'm no scholar, I'm no lawyer. I can't sit here and go through all the articles and dwell you with everything like that. But what I do know as a farmer, and I'll just farmerise it very simple, is that I know about contracts and I know about agreements. I've had plenty that I haven't even signed. I've just said, yes, I'm doing that. And 6 months later, it can move against you quite a lot, or it can go for you, but you follow through and you do what you say. And if you want to change it, you need 2 signatories to that agreement to change it, not just one.
Okay.
And if you've got one, that's a very dishonest position, I believe. And that's what we saw with this government, a very dishonest posture. So that's simply the way I see it. And we're seeing the threads of the treaty still being pulled by the national government with changes around those really important legal terms like give effect to or must consider, and all those wee legal terms are so important. Yeah, so it's continually doing that.
Do you think Labour will directly address those issues and what we have lost in terms of the vocabulary around Te Tiriti and its place in our laws? Do you think, will Labour bring those back?
I haven't really talked about that, understand that, but I assume they would. Like the discussions that I have with the Labour Party, the treaty is at the centre, at the core, to a point. I know this sounds strange, to a point we don't really talk about it that much because we just believe it to be there. That might seem a bit strange, but so I would assume so, especially through resource management, that will be returned.
It will be returned because that's pretty bad taken out of there.
Yeah.
Have you got any further thoughts on that one?
Not really. Like it took me a while around resource management. We were supposed to talk about that a little bit more so that I had a better understanding of what resource management actually is. So I don't know if that's another question or if it's going to be a big question to ask right now. If you were to explain what resource management is.
Well, it's our natural resources like anything we have in our land and our water and our rivers especially. And everyone, it is so difficult because everyone wants a piece of it.
Yeah.
That's where all profit comes from, isn't it?
It does.
It comes
It
from
does.
natural resources or it comes from
Yep.
people.
Yep.
There's no other place that profit comes from.
That's right. So when I was on the Conservation Board, the resource you could say was Fiordland National Park. The amount of businesses that wanted concessions to get into that place, you get in there, you're doing pretty good. So that was a resource. The rivers, people want water takes out of rivers. They want gravel out of rivers, all these sorts of things. And then there's a pollution take too. So that's when you get a consent to do an activity that does cause pollution, like some...
Like put sewage in the river.
Yep. All these sorts of things that you'll know about in Queenstown, you'll need a resource consent. So the regional councils holds all the consents. They're like the policemen of all the other councils to keep an eye on things. So as you'll know, Alexa, it doesn't make the regional councils very popular. Yeah. You know, I used to say a district council builds helicopter pads and they have cups of teas with lamingtons. The regional council will turn up with a body cam at your farm. You know, so...
Yeah, it can be pretty uncomfortable sometimes because when you regulate people's ability to pollute, you are actually costing them money and they don't like it.
And let's be honest, any activity, land use activity, does have a polluting effect.
Yeah, of course it does.
It does.
Every land use has some sort of polluting effect.
Some's minor, some's a lot bigger, major. So
that leads us pretty quickly into the local government amalgamation because we're talking regional councils, which may disappear at the moment under the current plans, disappear in 2028. First of all, what do you think about those amalgamation plans? And secondly, how do you think district councils can possibly take over that role?
Well, it's quite a difficult discussion. First of all, I would probably say that in the last local body elections, half of the mayors of this country were turfed out, so we've got a whole new crop. And I would say, I'm going to do a generalised statement here, that a lot of those mayors, even experienced ones, will not understand regional functions. And we had people advocating in the Southland region very strongly to get rid of the regional councils, got to get rid of them, just for the reasons that I've been talking about. And then they started to realise, what about the things I love? What about the Underia and Breaksea Sound, the clean up there? People love diving, you can't stop that. What about the Wilding Pines and Mid-Dome, their regional functions? A mayor from Invercargill could say, well, who cares about some trees, little wee trees on the hill? We need to get some pipes in down Tay Street. So I'm worried that they don't know about those functions and how important they are.
And we see this happening too as we take out the regional council committees that currently have kaitahu representation in our regions. And how do you think that rangatiratanga and kaitiakitanga can fare? How's that going to happen if local councils assume those responsibilities and no longer have those?
I can probably just speak to that in a way, is that when I chaired, my last job was chairing the committee that all the operations of Southland, the regional council, reported to. And on my committee, we had 2 Ngāi Tahu appointees, and I'm not going to name who they are, but one was a nationally recognised pest expert, and people, absolutely fantastic involvement and contribution in those committees. And We did that for 10 years in the regional council in Southland, and no one batted an eyelid, and it was just accepted, and that was fine.
And we always had it at the Otago Regional Council as well. We had quite substantial Ngāi Tahu presence on our committees and voting rights and so on, and it was awesome. But I noticed that this time the Otago Regional Council's got rid of those committees.
Oh, have they?
Yeah, they call them portfolios now so that they don't have to have committees and have to suffer having anyone from Ngāi Tahu on it. What a dreadful thing that would be, to have someone from Ngāi Tahu with all their knowledge and all their background and all their history on those committees. They gave us so much on those committees, but they've pretty much taken them out now.
Background in history. I was on a radio program, I'll share a wee story. The guy was saying to me, he was talking about Chinese and they do infrastructure and all that and long-term vision. And he said, wouldn't it be good if we had a group like the Chinese that could have a long-term vision for this country? And I said, yeah, we have, iwi. And there was just silence. He wasn't expecting that one. But exactly. It is true. And
it's true.
It is, yeah. So.
And if we carry on down that vein, you will have seen the Ngāi Tahu proposal for amalgamation. What did you think of that?
Absolutely makes sense. Absolutely, yeah. You can't have a catchment. So the problem is, in Southland they were talking about 2 unitary councils.
They were
two councils,
here too, in Otago.
But the Invercargill Mayor quite rightly understood the very fact is that they're at the bottom of the Reti catchment. They can't be separated from it because for example, flood protection, there's urban banks all the way up, higher up in the Reti catchment that protect Invercargill with all the floodways, so they've got to have access to those to be able to look after those. You don't want another council saying, oh, we couldn't really afford to fix your flood bank. We're sorry, Invercargill, you got flooded. So there's connection that you can't deny.
Catchments, again, yes. You can start to see how really important they are, eh?
Resource management, yes.
Okay, so I was thinking we probably should have a little trip down how you see the political environment at the moment. I mean, you've got Opportunity Party in there, maybe Kingmaker. You've got somebody coming up with captain's calls the whole time and everyone's having to race backwards and pedal backwards a million miles an hour to try and figure it out. And they've got no new taxes now, and the Auckland regional deal seems to have, Wayne Brown seems upset. So things seem a bit messy. Do they seem messy to you, Charlotte?
Yeah, this all sounds really messy to me. So, yeah, but listening and just taking this all in. So, yeah, kind of grasping like the importance of these councils. And I did have a question for you around why Labour, but I think you pretty much answered it, why, and sharing your background. So I appreciate that because I didn't really have much of an understanding. I was like, what? Why is a farmer going to go for Labour? Like, does it make sense? Does his family like him? Does his family still talk to him? Or, because it is very farm country. Okay. So besides your neighbours and stuff like that, and I didn't realise your kids were Ngāi Tahu as well. So
I'll talk about that I'll just address that question. And I can do it in a story because life's just a collection of stories, isn't it? So we were at a function one night, me and Kim, in Queenstown here. There's a few drinks happening and I got talking to this lovely couple and they were so nice and we're chatting away and we're having laughs. And then we said, oh, what do you do? And they were farmers. They said, I'm a farmer from Terrace. And I thought, okay, I know what's coming next. It's about the mine. They asked me about that. But before I could say, I gave my opinion, I had to say that I'm the Labour candidate for Southland. And the lady went from smiling and happy to, she took half a step back from me, and her husband, the good bloke here, says, oh, Peter, you're a good fella a minute ago, and I'm sure you're still a good fella now.
Yeah.
And then she was silent, and then there's a few people gathered around, and she said, but why? And I said, look, we can talk about policy positions. You've got your policy, this party's got their policy, and that's really important, that stuff. But I know when I go to a Labour conference or a congress, they don't talk about treaty because they believe it to be at the centre of our country. They don't talk about the women's pay equity, 180,000 women that were just cut off in these retrospective, absolutely terrible. these sorts of things we don't talk about.
Because you definitely know you're addressing them.
We definitely know we're addressing them, and we don't talk about gender, we don't talk about race, we don't talk about boys and girls toilets, all that awful stuff that I don't think any Kiwi wants to talk about, but we've got politicians that want to make it a subject because they see it as divisive.
So just to be clear,
it's a safe space for me. I know that I'm not going to have to address those things, and people were sort of stunned when I said that. But that's the way I feel.
we don't need to talk about them, because absolutely we should be settled on those things by now.
I believe so.
Goodness, having to revisit stuff that was settled decades ago.
Yeah. So that's basically it. So I believe that my children, my grandchildren, will not put up with this divisive type of politics. And we've got an older generation that's moving out in this country too, and I think there's big demographic changes, and you talked about the political changes too. That's very hard to read, isn't it? Because that seems very disrupted.
It interested me that guy saw you that people see you differently because you're a Labour candidate. I mean, have we become that divisive in our country where we get into our corners and that's it? That sounds very Trumpy in America to me.
I think that is very much how it is. Like, if you'd like stories, I was recently up in Auckland with some of my colleagues, and we were actually talking about who we were voting for. And I was like, this is good. We should be talking about who we're going to vote for. And basically, she has said, she goes, well, I did that test online, you know, that voting test, and what aligns with your values, and it kind of helps you. It generates who you should vote for. And basically, it was Labour Green Party, but she goes, but I will never vote for them. And I was like, what do you mean? If that aligns with your values, why not? She goes, because I don't like what they done at the last election. And that's what around COVID and stuff like that. So she didn't like what Labour had done around COVID and how I felt Jacinda had saved our country, to be honest. So basically she's like, yeah, I didn't believe in COVID and things like that. But I'm like, but you did this test, right? And she goes, yes, I did. And I was like, and it says that your values, what you believe in, 100%, that you should be voting for Labour and the Green Party, or the Green Party. She goes, yeah, but I'm not voting for them because I just don't like them. And I'm like, and I was like, so yes, I think the country is very much like that. They are going to vote for who they are going to vote for because of how they feel. So a question that I asked Takata when he was here, I was like, if your family was going to describe you, how would they describe you? So how would your family, in a few words, describe you as a person?
That's a really good question. I'm quite, I could say that this might be just a generic thing, is that...
I'm going to check on your wife later, don't worry. So.
Yes.
I know, Kim, she's lovely. Yeah, and she'll tell us, she'll give us the truth on that.
We might interview her later, okay? Just get the truth.
She'll be great to have on this program, the podcast. I'm fiscally pretty conservative, as my life of being a farmer, and a sheep farmer especially. So, but I'm liberal. I'm pretty liberal socially.
And they'd say that about you?
Yep, I would think so. And environment, pretty progressive with environment. I think I'm ambitious around that sort of stuff. Definitely, it's not an either or, it's a both together.
How about a non-political description of you? How would your family describe you?
As someone, we've had something in our family, is that if something's not right, you do something about it.
Good.
So a bit of bravery and a bit of courage, I would think, too. And my family has that. My daughter and my son do, and my wife Kim, most definitely.
Perfect. I can't wait to meet him.
Yeah.
So while we're kind of in this National Labour, all this thing, National keeps undoing Labour's work. But I've heard from Labour that they don't want to flip-flop and therefore put the country through flip-flops and therefore won't undo National's work, which, you know, that sounds good and pragmatic to me, but I worry that if National isn't not flip-flopping, if they're not partaking of the same kind of rules, we're constantly flopping without the flip towards ever further right. It's just dragging us down a direction.
The flipping and the flopping's got me a bit confused, but I could say, what you're trying to say is that our base shifts all the time further to the right every time.
Every time.
That's what you're worried about.
Yes, that they move something, they change something, and the base moves to the right there, and Labour isn't hauling it back.
Yes. Yeah.
Is that?
Because Labour looks to be quite responsible and business focused, and I know for a farmer too, that's one of our key things. As a farm's a biological system. It's like an oil tanker going on the ocean. It takes 30 miles to stop and 30 miles to turn around. And you can't just change those settings within a biological system. So we worry about that.
National was pretty quick at changing a lot of things from Labour, and it was pretty instant. So if they can do it, why couldn't Labour?
Yep, that's right.
Yeah.
And I guess that's the polarisation. I never saw massive changes going from a Clark-led government to a Key-led government in farming. There was just
they wouldn't do that. No.
There was. We just thought, okay, that was election.
So that leads us into, what do you think of this government? What do you think of the political environment now? What do you think of opportunity?
Have I got something to say about
that? Yeah, go for it.
I think there's been huge disruption in their political, especially on the centre-right. I believe the National Party's been knocked off its centre foundation. I don't think it's a centre-right party anymore. We've probably had a Prime Minister that hasn't had the handle on the tiller, hasn't had a strong pull, because his job is to keep its soul where it's meant to be. And an ex-Prime Minister once told me, I asked a question, he said it's like a paddock with an electric fence around it. And you can do anything within that paddock, but boy oh boy, if you touch that electric fence, it's all over. And that keeps everything within the paddock. And that was an analogy. And we're not seeing that. And we're seeing a National Party now that is really confused around who their opposition is. They're turning back to the old foe, which is Labour, but they've got the two other parties on the right that's stealing their lunch. And they haven't even recognised that yet. And New Zealand First is doing that. They've brought in these imported far-right values from overseas, these themes and talking points that no one likes.
They sound like they're coming out of Trump.
Yep. So they've brought them in, they've imported them in, and while they've done that, they've made a clear statement that they can't work with Labour, so they're not a party of the centre anymore. They're not a kingmaker party. So there's been a void there. How does this work? I guess it's your themes and your talking points indicate where you are along that political spectrum. There's no sort of caption to say you are here and you're moving here. It's quite a subtle thing. For a lot of people I talk to about that, they will say, oh, no, Pete, no, I don't believe that. They've dragged a lot of people along with them too, to the right. And I don't know, I think demographics has got a large part to play with that. There's a lot of people that believe this country isn't as good as it used to be. And of course we pick out the great moments in the past, don't we? We don't pick out the rubbish ones. But I've got ambition, and I know Labour has, that tomorrow will be better than yesterday. And I'm worried about these parties of the right. They will have talk about let's get back, and let's use the word again and back is language of the past.
But it's a rubbish narrative because the country has moved to the right. It was far more left-leaning, right back to Muldoon. It was far more left-leaning than it is now.
Yes. Yep.
And it had a wee blip as it went to its neoliberalism, and that, of course, Labour got us there, but National drove it harder and harder.
Yep.
But it's moved right. Even the John Key government seems so left compared to this National government.
It's changed.
So if they want to go backwards, they need to move their centre towards the left, not the right.
It's changed quite incredibly, and of course, to coin a phrase from Kieran McAnulty, all is not right over there. You've got a minister like Minister Goldsmith that's that's got 11 portfolios. I would say that, to me, that speaks of a low trust environment. If you've got the people, those things crunching around you, so anyway, we'll see where that goes. But I think things have changed around us, and that's part of why I'm doing what I'm doing, because I want to pull it back to where I think most Kiwis, I really still believe they are, in that centre area.
And do you think most Kiwis see that centre, and I've been interested in your view on this too, Shaila, about with rangatiratanga and kaitiakitanga? Do most Kiwis believe that those are principles that should be governing our country? Better throw kotahitanga in there too.
I think most Kiwis are pretty proud.
I think
I think they're very,
so
very
too.
proud.
I think so too. Like, yeah, I don't know. Of course, I think, of course, everybody wants a safe environment for our children, our grandchildren to come. Like, we have to leave a place better than what we found it. And if we don't, then all the money in the world's not going to matter.
Yep.
All the money in the world's not going to, save our future for our children. So, yeah.
So most people probably.
I would think so. I'd like to think so.
I'd like to think so.
Oh, I think it is really important. And things have shifted quite dramatically. So for a decade, I run the local Anzac service in our wee town, Dipton. It was a great job. emceed it and did the speech. First thing I did was change the program. You wouldn't think it would be controversial. We still had God Save the Queen and King at the back, but the national anthem on the front. Of course, I inserted the national anthem that we sing now.
With the first verse in Maori.
Yep. And I got a bit of pushback from that.
Classic.
But that was all right. Those same people, when there's going to an All Blacks game, they'll stand up and they'll mouth all the words and sing all the words.
Yes, they can.
And the kids lead, yeah, they do. And the kids lead you on. You can see all the kids up the front, and they're singing it, so everyone just gets into it.
Yeah.
And we leave that stuff behind, and that's a new norm, isn't it?
I wanted us to finish off with, because we're running short of time, with you thought you were going to be running late. You were running late. This is all about traffic in Queenstown. So let's just have a little chat about Queenstown infrastructure and where is our bed tax? Where is our ability to get some money to fix some of these dreadful issues? No, I don't believe everybody should be able to drive a private car everywhere in a geographically constrained area, but we should be able to have some investment into the way people get about here and into our systems of sewage and housing and so on. And we haven't been able to do that. And the cost of hosting tourists is really, really high on our ratepayers, but we have never had anybody help us to do this. And we have asked for years and years and years. We have asked for a bed tax. And I now feel we have an opposite tax, and it's a tax on the ratepayer to pay for all the hosting of tourists, but that's just flipping it around. Yep. Any thoughts on that? Especially after today's announcement.
Well, it's quite fresh, isn't it, the announcement? I haven't got across it all, but I understand that the government has said no to that, despite this community and other communities across New Zealand wanting this and saying they want this. I think we talked about the referendum in 2019, 81% of respondents said yes, that's what they want. So it has to be an act of law by government to enact that. They would be nervous about the word tax in doing that, totally understand that. But what are they going to do? Like, people have been asking for it. There probably was a way to do this. They probably could have said, called it a bed levy or something along those lines. I'm pretty sure that other parties would have come in and supported them if this is what the people want. But it seems as though it was a political decision to say no. And once again, Queenstown's left hanging. Queenstown's part of this southern region south of the Waitangi, and Go down to Gore in the southern regions and the farming strongholds there. And they say we're providing all this revenue for this country. We punch above our weight massively, don't we, with the tourism here and the farming in Southland.
The southern region, yes,
and
absolutely.
where does it all go? It just seems to just go up there.
This government tripled the international visitor levy that the last Labour government brought in. They tripled it.
It was a big jump.
It was a big jump. Australia doesn't pay it, nor does Singapore, but everyone else does when they come in, $100 roundabout. And then they spend it on marketing. Queenstown hasn't seen a raw red cent from that levy. I mean, just how, I don't even understand how that can be. And I'd like to see that if you were a person here in Southland, how on earth you would
first
help us out there.
First of all, the most important part around that proposed levy is that it was new money coming into town, and that was the most important part. So
coming into other towns, not our town.
No, but
never seen any of it.
That's right. And it is the government of the day's responsibility around this. People say to me, "Oh, what's Labour going to do?" You know, we're not in government.
That's
So
right.
it's their responsibility. It could have been their responsibility to make an announcement and preload that by coming and talking to Chris Hipkins or the Labour Party and saying, this is what we're proposing. Would you support us on that? And they could have got an answer. I don't know what that would have been. So a missed opportunity, I think. But just another story around that. Queenstown, we need this stuff and we're not even getting heard. Yeah. I thought we were going to get onto the traffic. We're going to talk about the traffic.
Talk about the traffic.
Well, we're sitting here doing this podcast, aren't we? Sort of waiting, and I'm thinking
waiting for the traffic
it'll
to
be
die
easy a bit, and I
Because
can
you got to
get
drive
home
back
to
to Dipton tonight.
Yeah, I do.
And it is died down, by the way, so you'll be good at this time.
Yeah, it's a really difficult thing. I'm not going to come into town and tell people that Labor's got the policies to fix everything.
Yeah.
I think that would be poor form.
There is trouble with NZTA, isn't there? There's going to have to be some rejig there somehow.
Agencies working together are renowned of having difficulty working together, and and then of course we've got all the levels of consultants involved in that, and companies, and we're just outside the BP roundabout. No, it's traffic lights now, isn't it? And that's a growth story in itself, isn't it? It's going to be a roundabout, but then the numbers got too high. The traffic, now we've got to change it.
Yeah, has to be traffic lights.
Yeah.
And when the modelling was done, there was a lot of active transport. We have the modelling done that 40% of people who move into that eastern part of town are going to need to move by public or active transport. And so, of course, all this was planned to be able to put in public and active infrastructure. But our dear friend Simeon Brown decided, nobody wants to travel by bus or bike, and so he's taken that infrastructure out. So now we have this lovely thing that isn't going to cater for private cars, and it isn't going to cater for active or public transport either. So we've got a gondola maybe coming.
Well,
but if we can't get to that, that's going to be tricky.
That's right, and we've got an airport just across the road here that actively are going for an extra 20% capacity, putting the taxiway in, and there they'll say we just want people to get out of here and get people in. Yep. So there's two active gondola type proposals. I'm wondering whether we've gone from a point of saying we think that's the best or that's the best to saying, my God, we've got to do everything.
We do have to do everything. I'm sure we have to do everything.
I think there's real desperation, and when people see these fast track housing proposals,
we haven't even gone there.
No,
run out of time. But
running out of time. They're pancaking on top of the problem as a cumulative effect, and they're all going to be pouring out onto the State Highway 6, and it really concerns me. I'm talking to people, and it makes me quite sad to talk to people that they don't believe they've got a future in their town, and it's really hard, and I can't say anything that can help them. But we have a clear policy contrast on fast track anyway. Which is...
I think that's fast track is starting to fall apart, I think, which is, I don't know. It is what it is.
Oh, it's going to pump the brakes on fast track. How's that for a wee line?
That's great. Thank you very much. And it's a great line to finish on. And I think we are out of time, but thank you so much for coming and joining us today. And it's been awesome.
Yes,
I loved it.
Yeah.
Loved
So-
it. Thank you.
That was Cuppa Kōrero. Our time is up.